What's up, my friends of Refuge Nation? We got another episode here of Bob at the Board. And today we're talking a little bit about family preparedness, medical preparedness, and what that might look like in terms of, figuring out how much of certain components you may need for, just a more prepared lifestyle. A lot of people love to stock up gear, goods, food, ammunition, support, supplies, all that stuff in case of a bad event, whether that be a weather event, whether that be, some sort of conflict, all these different scenarios that may happen. The aliens come down and invade. So we're looking at it really quick and we're doing some whiteboard math, and we wanted to talk to you about this, right? So when we look at, before we get into all these big numbers here, I want to talk about a little theory. It's called ruck, truck, house. And so understanding that these are three different lines that you may have in terms of gear and then support, right? So the idea of a ruck is the gear that you have on you in the field, right? So that's what's on your person every single day. So that's your line items, right? So that may be an IFAK and a couple of extra tourniquets or maybe a couple of extra chest seals, but it's not a whole bag, right? Unless you're a medic, in which case you're carrying extra gear. But having some sort of gear on you is important. But you may use that gear in the field, or you may lose that gear in the field, or it may have been, affected in some sort of negative way to where, it's now sacrificed. It's now the efficacy has been depleted. And so we want to have a resupply with us, and that's where we go to the truck, right? So the truck has our resupply, and then the truck also has a higher level of care. So that's some sort of individual who has more training, who has more capability, or maybe it's resources for you to garner more information. It's downloaded PDFs, it's documents and files, it's books, it's textbooks, all this stuff to where you can, refer back to that higher level of care, that higher level of information. So that way you are not the one just making, uninformed decisions, right? And then that resupply too. So having some sort of gear at the truck to where you're like, oh, I lost my tourniquet in the field, or I used my tourniquet on this person. And so having a resupply station at another place is a really, really important factor, right? And then after the truck, we have the house, right? So the house is the idea of where the truck goes back to, whether that's in a military context, a fob, or whether that's for you, maybe it's a safe site, it's your bug out zone, it's your home actual, whatever that may be, right? And so what we recommend, or what we think is a pretty good idea, is having a resupply times 2, right? So being able to resupply your IFAK times 2, a higher level of care, so having that personnel that knows more than you do, that is equipped and trained, right? Having a clean environment, right? In the field, it gets nasty, it gets dirty, it's muddy, all that stuff. And so having somewhere clean to be able to work, have a casualty rest to where they're not worried about infection or exposure. And then also having support staff, somebody else to monitor the casualty, somebody else to look after the person who has been injured. So that way you're not the only person, right? Fighting a battle of one is very challenging. And so we want support staff at that house element to just take some of the pressure and the pain off of us. And so looking at the ruck, truck, house theory, we then need to have a good idea of what some of these numbers might actually look like, right? So that's where we go over here to the size, right? And so coming off the size, we have a couple of different, avenues, if you would, different team sizes. So we have the lone wolf idea. This is the guy who's a man of one or a team of one, and kind of what they may need in terms to support the ruck, truck, house theory. So for tourniquets, you have 10 to 12, right? And you have to understand that's gear on you, gear in the truck, and then gear at the house, right? And then you have hemostatic gauzes, 10 to 12, right? ETDs 12 to 16 because they can be used for different purposes outside of just supporting, wound packing. Then you have chest seals, right? So 10 to 12 as well. Once again, creating those lines of redundancy if, a set were to get punctured or were to get torn or get lost, all of that stuff. Trauma support. So these are your trauma support modules. This is, shock blankets, additional gauzes, eye pads, eye shields, triangle bandages, additional duct tape, all that stuff that comes into supporting you in rendering aid to a traumatic injury. So we want to have about 12 to 16 trauma support modules spread out amongst our gear. And so that gives us the ability to resupply what has been used as well as maybe distribute goods as well. Then we have wound care. So this is, tending to a wound after a traumatic injury, whether that be a laceration or an abrasion to the head. We want to be able to redress, clean, sanitize, all this stuff that's involved in maintaining proper clean wound care. And so we're looking for a 30-day supply, right, for one person. And so think about that in the sense of a wound care bucket. A wound care bucket is built out to be a 30-day supply for one injury, right? And so you having a wound care bucket set aside as one person is a great preparedness item, just making sure you have the gear to, nurse your wounds after you've experienced them. And then with that, we have over-the-counters and medications, right? And we also recommend a 30-day supply. So this is, any of your over-the-counter meds, whether that's Tylenol, ibuprofen, or whether you work with Jace Medical and you get some, antibiotics and some steroids, stuff that's going to help you fight off any infections, stuff that's going to manage pain and mitigate those symptoms, stuff that really just helps you in your process of healing. We want to make sure we have over-the-counter goods and then also medications, right? And then working off of that, we're gonna see that it exponentially grows. So we have a man plus one, right? And so now we're talking 16 to 20, right? Depending on what you're doing, what your capability is, and what the capacity of your operation may be. If it's bunker down and stay where you are, or if you're having to go help people in your community, whatever this may be, we are talking about preparedness for, large scale events, right? This isn't just, hey, what you're doing every single day. So you have 16 to 20 tourniquets, 16 to 20 hemostatic gauzes, 20 to 24 emergency trauma dressings, 16 to 20 chest seals, 20 to 24 trauma support modules, a 60-day supply of wound care, right? So 2 30-day supplies, and then a 75-day supply of over-the-counter goods and medications. Now, the reason that the exponent is a little bit different on the over-the-counters and then the medications is because once one person suffers an injury and another person is tending to them, the stress and the inoculation of pressure inside of that incident usually causes that person to suffer some sort of decline in their immune system. And so we want to be able to support that individual inside of those instances to where as they're dealing with those high stress environments, they're not also getting sick. They're not also suffering as well. So having a little bit of extra goes a long way when you have additional people, right? Then we see a team of 3 to 4, right? So working off a team of 3 to 4, you have 24 to 30 tourniquets, 24 to 30 hemostatic gauzes, 30 to 36 emergency trauma dressings, 24 to 30 chest seals, 24 to 30 trauma support modules, 2 60-day supplies of wound care, and 2 75-day supplies of over-the-counter goods and medications. Now, I know these are large and encumbersome numbers, but what we have to understand here is you're not just supporting one person for one time. You're supporting each one of these individuals inside of the ruck, inside of the truck, and inside of the house. And so we have resupplies and systems of redundancy in place so that way, oh, I'm not using my last chest seal. That's just not a possibility. Or, oh, I'm using my last tourniquet. That's not possible. We have additional tourniquets located in different locations, right? And then building off a team of 4 to 8, we're gonna go ahead and you see that the exponent decreases, right, as we go. And so now we've got 36 to 48 tourniquets, 36 to 48 hemostatic gauzes, 48 to 60 emergency trauma dressings, 36 to 48 chest seals, 36 to 48 trauma support modules, 4 60-day supplies of wound care, and 4 75-day supplies of over-the-counter goods and medications. Now, these numbers are rough and fast. They could be larger for you, right? You may want to stockpile a little bit more because you're helping people in your community and you're gonna use those goods quick, right? Something that people don't understand is inside of mass casualty events, it's very often that the hospital runs out of hemostatic impregnated gauzes, runs out of chest seals. They're having to make improvised occlusive dressings. And a lot of times the ambulances, the support staff in your county, whatever it may be, they don't have this much on them. And so you having that gear on you then makes you self-resilient, self-reliant, and you're not dependent on systems that may be overloaded, that may be overburdened, and you're rather capable and able to render aid and maintain care for yourself and the people you love, right? Because that's what we're talking about here, is maintaining some sort of essence of normalcy for the people that you care about. And so these are quick, hard, fast numbers as to what you could be looking at as goals to set as your family, right? So if you have 4 people inside of your mutual assistance group, or you have four people in your friend group and you guys are trying to get more prepared for the times ahead, go ahead and take a look and go, well, let's shoot for 36 tourniquets, right? Right now we have 12. Right? So we know we have to add 24. You guys could want to build to 48. That's absolutely great. Right? But let's shoot for 36. Let's start there and try to meet that goal. And then off of that, continuing to build, continuing to build, continuing to build. Because remember, guys, we've talked about this in our previous video in the EDC. What is our most important components right now in terms of, responding to a traumatic injury? It's massive bleeding, right? So we need to have tourniquets, we need to have hemostatic gauze, we need to have ETDs. It's very, very important. And then off of that comes your trauma support modules and maybe your shears or your seals or your over-the-counter goods or your medications and all that stuff, right? But maintaining that, systems of redundancy for ruck, truck, house, for you, your team, the people that you do life with is very, very important. So this is a quick look as to what it may take to get more prepared medically in terms of your IFACs, in terms of your medical response and your preparedness for over-the-counter, for holistic medicine, all that stuff. This is a quick little video, a snapshot photo as some goals you can be setting. So what I want to know from you in the comments is, what are you doing right now to get more prepared? What are you grabbing? What skills are you working on? How are you focusing your training? How are you talking to your team? Are you guys putting your eggs all in one basket? Are you locating them in different spots? What's the tactics? And don't share it all in the comments below because, OPSEC is a thing. But rather, give us some feedback so that way we can know how to better work with y'all to bring more information from subject matter experts. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that this helps. If it did help, feel free to let us know in the comment below. And we love you guys. And remember, carry an effing tourniquet.